You believe people see the real you, but they only see habits. If you changed your inner pattern, their picture of you would collapse. The mind can become unrecognizable quietly, while everyone thinks nothing has shifted. Most people try to reinvent themselves by changing surface details and outer symbols. They change clothes, routines, platforms, yet carry the same emotional patterns everywhere. The world does not respond to words, it responds to invisible patterns of energy. If that pattern stays the same, every attempt at reinvention becomes an empty circle. True reinvention begins with something quieter, your emotional signature in every situation. It is the way you react when pushed, questioned, ignored, or misunderstood. It is the speed of your anger, the weight of your silence. It is the look in your eyes when you feel threatened or disrespected. This emotional signature is what people remember when they think of you. Machiavellian wisdom does not focus on acting louder, it focuses on seeing deeper. It teaches that power is not only what you do, but how you seem. Seeming calm while feeling chaos inside creates inner conflict and outer confusion. Becoming unrecognizable means removing this conflict and rewriting how you truly process pressure. In a short, focused period, you can start changing this signature deliberately. Not by pretending to be another person, but by rebuilding your inner responses. You are not changing your nature, you are training your reactions with intelligence. You start by studying yourself like an observer, not like a judge. Watch how your mind reacts when someone questions your ideas directly. Notice the first emotional impulse, maybe defense, justification, retreat, or hidden resentment. Do not excuse it, do not condemn it, just label it with simple clarity. For example, you can think, this is fear of losing control speaking now. This simple labeling begins the separation between you and your automatic patterns. The moment you can describe a reaction, you stand slightly above it. Most people never reach this level. They are completely merged with every impulse. They say, I am angry, instead of an anger response is arising inside me. Power psychology begins at this small distance, this gap between reaction and awareness. Within this gap lies the possibility of choice, and choice creates a new identity. Your goal in the coming days is to widen this inner space. The wider it becomes, the slower your reactions feel to your own mind. When reactions feel slower inside, they look calmer outside even if pressure increases. Others see the same event, yet your face and voice change very little. This is how emotional authority is born, through trained delay, not forced pretending. You move from automatic response to calculated response, without feeling fake or mechanical. To reach this level, you must understand how triggers secretly command your behavior. A trigger is a small event that unlocks a large emotional program. Someone may slightly disagree with you, and suddenly you feel deep rejection. The disagreement is small, but the inner program connected to it is huge. In the next days, your task is to list your strongest triggers mentally. Notice what repeatedly disturbs your balance, interruption, criticism, being ignored, or sudden change. Each trigger reveals a belief about yourself, often hidden under confident behavior. For example, strong reaction to criticism can hide fragile dependence on constant approval. Once a trigger is identified, you no longer meet it blindly. You know, when this appears, my mind will try to follow an old script. Instead of resisting the feeling, you slow the script down from inside. You let the emotion rise, but you refuse to obey its first order. That refusal is the birth of a new version of you. It is quiet, invisible, and no one sees it directly. Yet after enough repetitions, your whole presence starts to feel different to others. They notice you do not bite so fast, complain so fast, or collapse so fast. Machiavellian insight adds another layer here. It questions your need for instant expression. Why must every feeling be expressed immediately and fully to the outside world? Immediate expression may feel honest, but it often feeds the wrong observers. People who test you learn your weaknesses through your uncontrolled reactions. When you hold your reaction for a short inner moment, you protect information. You decide what to reveal, what to soften, and what to keep private. This does not mean emotional suppression, it means emotional strategy. You are not a closed book, you are a well-edited one. Over time, your environment becomes confused in a subtle way. They push old buttons, expecting the usual display, but receive a calmer presence. They may feel slightly unsettled because their map of you no longer fits. This confusion is not cruelty, it is the space where respect begins. People respect what they cannot easily predict or control. When your reactions become less predictable, you become more interesting and harder to manipulate. You are no longer the person who always explains, protests, or apologizes immediately. You become the person who pauses, observes, and then responds with measured clarity. To build this new presence, you must also understand emotional detachment correctly. Detachment is not coldness, it is prioritizing inner stability over external approval. It means you do not rush to fix every misunderstanding instantly. You let some confusion breathe while you keep your center steady. This unsettles those who rely on your past softness or emotional availability. They sense that something in you has pulled back its automatic compliance. They are now dealing with a mind that chooses, not a mind that reacts. This quiet shift is one of the foundations of becoming unrecognizable. However, this inner transformation is impossible without one more skill: conscious self-observation. You must watch yourself in real time, like a scientist studying repeating patterns. You notice how your tone rises when you feel threatened by disagreement. You see how your breathing changes when someone withdraws attention suddenly. Every small observation is a data point in your psychological manual. With enough data, you begin to see the grand pattern of your identity. You realize you were never one solid self, just a collection of trained responses. If responses can be trained once, they can also be retrained with intention. This realization is powerful, but also dangerous if misused. A mind that knows its own plasticity can become deeply wise. The same mind can also use this knowledge to become manipulative and deceptive. The difference lies in one simple question: why do you want to change? If the answer is revenge, domination, or ego validation, your transformation will poison you. You may gain short-term control, but lose your inner peace completely. If the answer is clarity, freedom, and emotional independence, your change becomes sustainable. You become harder to control, but also kinder because you fear less. This is the paradox of true power. The calmer you are, the less cruel you need to be. Your presence no longer fights for recognition, it simply exists with steady strength. People feel this and unconsciously adjust their behavior around you. They either rise to your level of calm or reveal their own chaos. As you move forward, your main task is simple but difficult. Train this inner pause, observe your triggers, and choose delayed expression with intention. Each time you succeed, you weaken the old version living inside you. Each time you fail and then reflect, you still grow stronger in awareness. Slowly, the person people think they know begins to fade in their memory. Their stories about you feel less accurate, their assumptions start missing the target. You are no longer defined by past reactions, but by present awareness. At that point, a quiet question rises inside. If you can reshape your reactions this deeply, what other parts of your identity are waiting to be rewritten? You think you control your reactions, but your reactions often control you. You believe you choose your emotions, but they are mostly pre-programmed. If you understood who installed these programs, your whole identity would shake. Most people live inside automatic patterns created long before conscious awareness. These patterns activate faster than thought and stronger than intention. They define tone, posture, choices, and the silent signals you send to others. Becoming unrecognizable requires breaking these invisible emotional codes. The first step is understanding how emotional momentum works. Momentum is the speed at which your inner state builds without your permission. One small disturbance becomes a heavy emotional wave within seconds. It takes over judgment and pushes you toward predictable outcomes. Manipulators rely on this momentum more than any other factor. They know the mind becomes blind when emotion accelerates quickly. They trigger you softly, then watch your reaction unfold by itself. You believe they caused your anger, but it was your momentum that exploded. Machiavellian intelligence teaches something quiet and powerful. You do not need to stop emotion, you only need to slow its rise. A slow rising emotion becomes manageable and strategic. A fast rising emotion becomes destructive and revealing. Slowing this rise begins with a simple inner cue, noticing the first shift. This shift appears as tension in the mind before it appears in the body. It feels like a tiny pull, a small spark, or an inward tightening. Most people ignore this cue, and by ignoring it, they lose control. Your task in this phase is to detect the earliest point of change. When you feel even a slight movement inside, name it quietly. You can think a rise is starting, or a trigger is forming now. This single acknowledgement decreases emotional speed immediately. The mind cannot escalate fully while being observed. Awareness interrupts the momentum like a hand, slowing a spinning wheel. You do not fight the emotion, you simply recognize its motion. This recognition shifts the mind from being inside the emotion to watching it. The more you practice this, the more space grows between trigger and reaction. In that space you gain leverage, choice, and subtle authority. People notice this shift even if they cannot explain it. They see you remain centered while they expect your usual patterns. This new form of control is not external dominance. It is internal stability, and it changes your identity from the inside. The old version of you was reactive and predictable. The new version becomes measured, strategic, and quietly powerful. Next comes the concept of emotional redirection. Redirection means using your rising emotion to gather information instead of reacting. When something triggers you, your first thought becomes investigative. You mentally ask, what is this reaction trying to protect? Every emotional surge hides a deeper belief. A rise in irritation may hide fear of disrespect. A rise in sadness may hide fear of invisibility. A rise in anger may hide fear of losing control. Your task is to discover the belief behind the emotion. Once you find it, the trigger loses much of its influence. You no longer panic because you understand the true root. Understanding transforms pressure into clarity. The moment you realize, this trigger reflects an old insecurity, your identity shifts. You stop reacting from childhood patterns or past experiences. You respond from present awareness and present intention. This shift is one of the foundations of becoming psychologically upgraded. Machiavellian insight adds another crucial layer. Never show rising emotion before you understand its meaning. If you express too early, you reveal your weaknesses to the wrong eyes. If you hold for a moment, you protect your inner structure. The secret is not emotional suppression, but emotional timing. Timing determines whether you appear fragile or composed. A delayed response looks grounded and thoughtful. A rushed response looks panicked and uncontrolled. Day by day, as you slow your emotional rise, you experience a deep inner effect. Your thoughts become clearer because your reactions stop drowning them. Your decisions become sharper because emotion no longer hijacks them. Your presence becomes calmer because inner storms reduce their speed. People around you sense this new energy. They cannot read you as easily as before. Their old strategies stop working because your responses are not automatic. This is the quiet beginning of psychological invisibility. To strengthen this transformation, you must also master emotional projection. Projection here does not mean showing false feelings. It means choosing which emotional frequency you want the world to mirror back. The world responds to the tone you radiate, even before you speak. If your inner tone radiates urgency, people treat you as unstable. If your inner tone radiates calm, people treat you as reliable. If your inner tone radiates clarity, people treat you as influential. People follow the energy that feels settled and direction-oriented. Emotional projection starts with breath control and inner visualization. When you feel pressured, imagine your mind expanding instead of collapsing. This creates a sense of inner spaciousness that others can feel. Your body becomes more grounded, and your voice becomes softer but firmer. A grounded presence makes you appear more mature, experienced, and self-directed. You become a psychological anchor in chaotic environments. People instinctively look toward those who stay calm during tension. This increases your influence without any effort or manipulation. As your emotional pace slows and your projection stabilizes, something strange happens. You start noticing how fast others react compared to you. You see their triggers, their patterns, and their weaknesses clearly. You realize how predictable most human behavior is. This realization must be handled with humility. The goal is not to exploit others, but to understand yourself better. Seeing patterns in others helps reveal the same patterns in your own mind. This awareness sharpens your emotional intelligence to a new level. Now you start developing a new identity without forcing it. You do not need to declare that you have changed. Your behavior reflects the transformation automatically. Your silence, your pace, your tone, everything begins to realign. Slowly, your old self becomes unrecognizable even to you. Your reactions no longer come from fear or ego. They come from presence, observation, and deliberate mindset. People cannot predict you because you are no longer ruled by old impulses. As you continue this process, a deeper question emerges quietly. If you can slow emotion and redirect triggers, is it possible to redesign the entire emotional structure that once defined your identity? You assume your thoughts guide your emotions, but emotions often guide your thoughts. You believe your mind is free, but it follows invisible rules you never created. If you uncovered these rules, your entire sense of self would feel unfamiliar. Every mind operates through hidden scripts that run beneath awareness. These scripts shape what you notice, what you fear, and what you avoid. They control how you interpret intention, tone, and subtle signals in others. To become unrecognizable, you must reveal and rewrite these silent scripts. The first script to examine is the script of instant interpretation. Your mind assigns meaning to events before reason has time to arrive. A neutral comment becomes disrespect. A delayed response becomes rejection. The mind prefers speed over accuracy because speed feels safer. Machiavellian insight teaches the opposite. Speed without clarity destroys emotional intelligence. True power comes from delaying interpretation until information stabilizes. Your mind must learn to pause meaning, not just pause reaction. When you pause meaning, you prevent your mind from creating false stories. You avoid the emotional spiral caused by imagined threats. You allow your awareness to see events without distortion. This pause transforms emotional chaos into psychological precision. The second script is the script of unconscious comparison. You compare yourself to others without noticing the comparison. You judge your worth based on imagined standards and silent expectations. Comparison drains emotional strength and creates invisible insecurity. To neutralize this script, observe when comparison appears. You will notice it in moments of discomfort or vulnerability. Your mind may whisper that you are behind, inadequate, or unnoticed. Do not argue with the comparison, simply label it as an old script. Labeling a script removes its authority over your identity. You realize it is a pattern you inherited, not a truth you chose. Once recognized, the script loses its emotional force. You stop living as a character in someone else's measurement system. The third script is the script of emotional ownership. You assume every emotion you feel belongs to you. However, many emotions are borrowed from past experiences and environments. They rise automatically because they were never examined consciously. To break this script, ask one quiet question when emotion surfaces. Is this feeling mine, or is it a memory responding for me? This question disconnects present identity from past conditioning. The mind becomes lighter because old emotions no longer define you. The fourth script is the script of self-narration. Your mind constantly tells a story about who you think you are. It says you are sensitive, or calm, or impatient, or insecure. These labels become self-fulfilling predictions that limit growth. To rewrite this script, you must allow identity to become flexible. You no longer say, "This is just how I am." You instead think, "This is how I have reacted until now." This shift opens the door to transformation without force. Machiavellian wisdom supports this flexibility deeply. Rigid identity makes you predictable and easily manipulated. Flexible identity makes you adaptive and psychologically advanced. The mind that adapts without losing its core becomes truly powerful. Another hidden script controls your emotional boundaries. Most people react to pressure based on approval-seeking tendencies. They fear disappointing others, so they over-explain or over-comply. This weakens emotional stability and reduces inner authority. To break this pattern, practice silent refusal. Silent refusal means choosing not to react immediately to demands. You pause before agreeing, explaining, or engaging. This pause resets your emotional boundaries without confrontation. People begin treating you differently when you stop volunteering instant access. They sense your energy has shifted from reactive to selective. Their old assumptions about your reliability no longer fit. This mismatch forces them to reevaluate how they approach you. The next hidden script involves emotional projection from others. People project their insecurities, fears, and frustrations onto you. You often absorb these projections without realizing the transfer. This creates confusion about which emotions belong to you. To protect yourself, practice psychological filtering. Psychological filtering means noticing when someone's tone tries to hook you. You observe the attempt, but you do not absorb the emotional color. You let their tone pass through without shaping your internal state. This skill creates a powerful form of emotional independence. You stop carrying feelings that were never yours. You stop reacting to moods that were never directed at you personally. You stop internalizing emotional energy that does not serve you. Once these scripts weaken, your internal structure becomes more stable. You start moving from emotional reaction to emotional design. You choose how you want to feel instead of inheriting old feelings. This is the beginning of psychological rewriting. As you rewrite these scripts, others notice subtle changes. Your silence becomes heavier because it is intentional. Your responses become clearer because they come from awareness. Your energy becomes stronger because it is no longer drained by scripts. People sense that something about you feels different. They cannot identify the change, but they feel its presence. You look the same, yet your emotional frequency feels altered. This is the moment where unrecognizability begins to appear externally. But there is a deeper layer of transformation waiting beneath these scripts. It is the layer that shapes how you see yourself when no one is watching. And if that layer changes, your entire identity rewrites from the core. The question waiting now is simple and unsettling. If your outer behavior is changing, what happens when your inner self-image changes too? You think you know yourself, but you only know the version shaped by old fears. You believe your identity is stable, but it shifts each time your emotions shift. If you redesigned your inner self-image, your entire reality would transform silently. The deepest script in the human mind is self-perception. Self-perception is the hidden ruler that decides how you walk, speak, think, and react. It controls how much power you allow yourself to hold. It controls whether you shrink or rise when pressure appears. Every behavior you display is linked to the image you hold of yourself. If you see yourself as weak, your reactions serve that image. If you see yourself as calm, your choices follow that narrative. Identity shapes action far more than action shapes identity. Machiavellian wisdom understands this deeply. A person who controls their self-image controls their entire psychological world. A person who neglects their self-image becomes a slave to old conditioning. To become unrecognizable, this self-image must be redesigned intentionally. The first step is identifying your internal labels. Labels like anxious, reactive, soft, impulsive, or unstable. You may not speak these labels out loud, but they control you silently. Every time you face stress, these labels activate like hidden commands. Your task now is to dismantle these mental commands one by one. You begin by replacing limiting labels with neutral observations. You stop saying, "I am easily triggered." You start saying, "My reactions have been untrained until now." This removes emotional weight from your self-image. You stop treating your identity as permanent and start treating it as adjustable. This mental flexibility is the doorway to the new version of you. A version not shaped by fear, but shaped by intention. Once labels weaken, you begin building a new internal structure. The new structure must be based on grounded emotional intelligence. You define yourself as calm, observant, steady, and quietly powerful. You repeat these qualities silently until the mind accepts them as truth. Self-image shifts through repetition, not force. The mind believes what it hears consistently, even if it contradicts the past. Once the mind updates its self-image, behavior updates automatically. This is why inner change always precedes outer transformation. Next comes the phase of behavioral alignment. Alignment means acting in ways that support the new identity. If your new identity is calm, your reactions must follow calmness. If your new identity is strategic, your decisions must follow clarity. You cannot claim a new identity mentally while feeding old patterns physically. Your body and mind must support the same internal direction. Every small action reinforces the version you are building. Behavior becomes the proof that convinces the subconscious mind. As alignment strengthens, something profound begins to happen. Your emotional triggers lose their power because they no longer match your new identity. Your mind stops reacting automatically because the old version is fading. You become harder to influence because your internal structure is stable. People around you sense this shift immediately. They notice your tone carries less urgency and more authority. They notice your silence feels intentional instead of insecure. They notice your reactions are slower, deeper, and more controlled. Your presence becomes heavier in a quiet way. No aggression, no intimidation, just calm psychological gravity. Others adjust their behavior without realizing why. They speak to you differently, approach you differently, treat you differently. This is the moment where you become truly unrecognizable. Not because you changed your style or voice, but because you changed your inner design. You no longer carry the same emotional frequency. You no longer respond with the same automatic scripts. Becoming unrecognizable is not about hiding who you are. It is about shedding who you never were. It is about dissolving the version built by fear, pressure, and past conditioning. It is about revealing the version designed with awareness and intelligence. But the final transformation requires one more crucial step. You must choose the kind of presence you want to radiate long-term. Your presence is the silent message you send before you speak. It determines whether people trust you, fear you, admire you, or underestimate you. You can radiate calm confidence that sets others at ease. You can radiate quiet authority that commands respect. You can radiate emotional clarity that prevents manipulation. You can radiate grounded neutrality that reveals hidden motives in others. Once your presence becomes deliberate, your transformation is complete. You are no longer shaped by triggers, scripts, or borrowed emotions. You are shaped by conscious awareness, emotional intelligence, and inner steadiness. This is the true meaning of becoming unrecognizable in a psychological sense. You become unrecognizable because you no longer act from old wounds. You no longer repeat old patterns. You no longer validate old labels. You no longer let others decide your emotional direction. Your new identity is built, stable, and integrated. Your old identity becomes only a memory, not a cage. Your reactions, tone, silence, and energy now follow intentional design. You are finally the creator, not the creation. And now the deepest truth becomes clear. The world never truly saw you before, it only saw your patterns. But now your patterns belong to you, not to your past. So a quiet question rises from within the new self you have built. If you have the power to redesign your mind completely, what else in your life can be rebuilt from the ground up?